My name is Raymond Johnson, and I'm turning 28 this year. I work in sales at a well-recognized major corporation. I think my sales performance is pretty decent. It's a result of me pushing myself hard at work since I never really exerted myself in anything else. My mother passed away last year. My father left because of divorce when I was too young to remember him. But since my mom passed, I've been feeling unmotivated. In my job and everything else. Every day feels like I'm just going through the motions at work after breaking up with my girlfriend. In the midst of this, something happened. Raymond, the section head wants to see you in the office. The moment I returned from an outside appointment, a clerk called out to me. My section head and I have never gotten along well. Probably because my lack of motivation is a thorn in his side. It seems he doesn't like that even a clearly unmotivated me was the top contract maker last month. It's a hassle dealing with him since he picks fights over the smallest things. It's Raymond here. May I come in? I knock on the manager's office door and enter. The manager and section head look at me with stern faces. Can you explain what this is about? What the section head thrust in front of me was an annual contract with a major client I had been working on. It was a job I had just handed over to a junior after being told to do so by the team leader. In other words, a project no longer in my hands. Why would you leave this in such a half-finished state and hand it over to a junior? That's irresponsible. While I was thinking about what was going on, the team section started yelling at me. He thinks that by yelling and intimidating, he can get his way. It's clear that the section head, who seems to be under this misunderstanding, wants to shift all the blame for this failure onto me. His words are nothing but criticisms of me. I think the section head probably wanted to claim this contract as his own success after it had passed from me to the junior. The evidence for this is that the junior came to me just the other day saying he felt like his job had been stolen. If successful, it would be his credit. If it failed, he could eliminate me, a thorn in his side. Pretty cunning. I held my silence as my supervisor continued to berate me. The manager just watched silently. In the end, he handed me my transfer notice. You're being transferred. The new assignment was a secondment to a client's factory. In other words, a demotion. I was so tired, I just took the notice without any objections. Then I checked where I was being transferred to and exclaimed, "Alaska, isn't it freezing there?" My comment, breaking the silence, made a vein on the manager's forehead twitch. "Is that all you have to say?" After that, the manager lectured me for an hour and a half. Man, being seconded at this time of year, what the hell did you do? The factory manager, holding the transfer notice, said this with a laugh when he came to greet me. Well, it was an obviously awkward timing for a transfer. Anyone would suspect that I messed up something. The post I was assigned to was a factory located in the suburbs of Anchorage, Alaska. I'm from LA and really hate the cold. Even though it's the south of Alaska, it's still cold for me. Even though summer was almost here, there was no sign of it at all. I look forward to working with you. I've heard that I will be in charge of general affairs. I'm from a sales background, so I'm counting on your guidance and strict instruction. As I entered the office and bowed deeply, everyone greeted me with warm applause. I remember feeling relieved and my shoulders relaxing at their response. The company housing provided for me was a room in an old apartment building. I hear there are many students and workers who are away from home living here. There was a young man living in the room next to mine. We've only exchanged greetings a few times, but he always seems to be with a different girl, so I guess he's quite a player. The apartment is on a hill, and you can see the sea in the distance. At night, the city lights are beautiful, and opening a can of beer while looking at the view from the balcony after work became my blissful moment. Today, as I was walking up the hill to return to the apartment, I passed by several children carrying paper lanterns. It was that brief time between sunset and twilight. I felt as if I'd slipped into a different dimension. Spotting a large bamboo decoration in the playground of the daycare halfway up the hill, I finally realized that today is July 7th, the day of the Star Festival. I guess the children are going to a festival. Thinking that, I unlocked the door to my apartment. Loosening my tie, I headed straight to the fridge to grab a can of beer. Then I went straight out to the balcony and opened the beer. There were paper lanterns swaying here and there on the hill. I could hear the children singing something on the wind. Tassels on bamboo, it's the Star Festival. It sounded like a children's song I've never heard before, and it had a strange feel to it. Learning little by little about the unknown aspects of this land isn't so bad. For the first time since my transfer, I thought something like that. At that moment, someone knocked at my door. I didn't know anyone well enough in this place to visit me. Thinking it must be the factory manager or the landlord, I opened the door without checking the intercom monitor. Standing in front of the door was a beauty in a robe. She was wearing a navy and white robe and holding a paper lantern. She sang the song the children had been singing earlier in a shy, quiet voice while looking down bashfully. "Bamboo for the Star Festival, let's celebrate. I need a candle, please." The next moment, she wraps her arms around my neck and buries her face in my chest. I hope she'll forgive me for instinctively wrapping my arms around her waist when embraced by a beauty in a robe whom I've just met. "I want more than just a candle, I want your best," she whispers in a slightly husky voice, and I'm taken aback. But she's definitely not someone I know. For her honor, I had to say something, and I called out, "I think you've got the wrong guy." My voice ended up being louder than I intended, but I was nervous too, so I hope she'll forgive me. "Aren't you, Jack?" Startled by my voice, she lifted her head and for the first time, really looked at my face. No, I'm Raymond," I responded with a wry smile. Apparently, she mistook me for her boyfriend. Her face turned beach red in an instant. From this close, I could see the long eyelashes outlining her wide-open eyes tremble. I'm so sorry. It seems like I've made a mistake." She quickly detached herself from me. Just at that moment, the door to the adjacent room opened and a cheerful couple, entwined at the waist, emerged. The young woman called the man Jack. At that point, I understood the situation. The beauty in a robe froze at the sight of the two of us. As the man began to turn his face towards us, she slipped into my apartment's entrance to escape his gaze. Pushed by her momentum, I fell back into my own front door. What a twist of fate. I found myself toppled over, trapped under a beauty at the front door. In this state, I silently waited as the sounds of footsteps from the adjacent room faded away. Eventually, the sound of an elevator door opening followed by the pitter-patter of children's feet overpowered the previous pair's footsteps. Gently pushing off her soft body, I asked, "Are you okay?" The beauty in a robe, her face a daze, pulled away from me and sat on the spot. Her side profile was somewhat sad, but beautiful. "I'm sorry. I not only made a mistake but also caused this inconvenience. I was really trying to surprise him." She tightly gripped her robe and lowered her head, repeatedly apologizing to me. A single tear dropped onto the back of her clenched hand. Wanting to comfort her, I reached out to touch her shoulder, but just then, the half-open front door swung fully open. "Star wishes on bamboo during the Festival of Star. Let's celebrate. Gimme a candle, eh?" There stood children in robes, each carrying a lantern. Singing a festive song, they reached out their hands. The beauty in a robe said, all right, pulling out candies from a plastic bag she held and handing them to the kids. With candies in hand, the children joyfully ran off towards the next house. It felt strangely like Halloween, and I just blankly watched the scene unfold. "Is this something like trick or treat?" I asked the beauty in a robe, who had been seeing off the children. The beauty in a robe looked at me in surprise. Then, as if understanding, she muttered softly, "You're not from around here. This is a candle collection event. On the day of the Star Festival, kids go around houses like this to get candies. It seems they used to really get candles back in the day, but now, the kids are more interested in candies." As she said this, she extended her hand towards me. With her help, I finally managed to get up. I'm embarrassed. I tried my best, but it didn't work out. She said this with a slightly relieved expression on her face. I've been told that I'm not cute since my high school days, so I tried a little. Pretty dumb, right? The beauty in a robe seemed to be one of the neighbors. I kind of knew there were other women, but I thought maybe he might choose me. I felt a pang of sadness and wanted to comfort her, but I couldn't find the right words. In response to my silence, she gave a faint smile. Afterward, she apologized to me numerous times and left a plethora of candies in my hands as a gift. I should have asked her name. As the elevator doors closed with a soft chime, I felt a tinge of regret. I saw the beauty in a robe again a week later. When she appeared at the factory office, she looked so different from before that at first, I didn't realize it was the same person. I'm Alice Mitchell, the consulting attorney. Dressed in a black suit with high heels. The understated yet well-done makeup suits her perfectly. When she wore a robe, her lips were a cute pink, but now they're painted a calm beige. Thank you for the other day. I had to do a double take when she whispered in a voice only I could hear. It seems that she is the legal advisor for this factory. She's a female lawyer who owns a law office near the company houses, and, according to the factory manager, she's very competent. Surprised by the unexpected reunion, Alice said to me, "I wanted to apologize for the other day." You already know our friend Alice. Please listen. Alice has always had bad luck with men. Recently, she's been smitten with a young man. The factory manager, who has known Alice since she was a child, started to gossip about her personal life. Panicked, Alice silenced the manager by covering his mouth with her hand. "You don't have to talk about that." Pouting at the factory manager, Alice looked a bit like a young girl. I decided to take her up on her offer of an apology. We agreed to have dinner and exchange contact information. I realized this was the first time I had exchanged personal contact information since arriving here. Thinking about our first meeting makes me want to laugh. She probably saw that on my face. Alice, who was discussing work, warned me with a glance, saying don't. I gave her a got it look in response. It felt like we were having a secret conversation, and my heart was pounding unusually hard. Later, my dinner with Alice ended in an argument. At first, the atmosphere was good. We were at a nice Western restaurant near the harbor, and everything was going smoothly until we had a little wine. As the meal was nearing its end, I think we were both getting drunk. I'm not good at alcohol. I don't think I have a bad temperament when I'm drunk, but I do tend to let my true feelings show a bit. Do you like younger men? When Alice told me she had broken up with that boyfriend, I impulsively asked her that. For a moment, it felt like the temperature of the atmosphere surrounding our table dropped by about 2 degrees. Despite my tactless question, Alice smiled with adult composure. What a rude man, to ask something like that. She placed her wine glass on the table. Does age matter in love? But the guy next door, he's a college student, isn't he? You're around 35, right, Alice? Isn't that a bit risky? The day after the commotion, I ran into the neighbor in the elevator and had a brief chat. I was surprised when I heard that he was still a college student. I'm only 32. Alice's voice quivered as she corrected me about her age. Really? Well, there's not much difference between 35 and 32. For a college student, both ages might seem like old hags. Alcohol can indeed be scary. At that time, I think I was just trying to grab her attention. I continued to provoke her with my words. Regretting it when you're sober doesn't do any good. Right, I'm an old hag, but there's a big difference between 32 and 35. What? In what way? At that point, Alice's patience snapped. She stood up from her chair, glaring at me. If you round up, there's a big difference between 30 and 40, you idiot. That's where my memory cuts off. Apparently, I was hit on the head with a baguette. That night, I learned the hard way that even hard bread can be a deadly weapon. Since that night, Alice has been giving me the cold shoulder. She has a law office near my housing complex, and every time she sees me on her way back, she pointedly looks away. I want to make amends, but I can't seem to find the right opportunity. Half a year after I was transferred to the factory, I heard that my former colleagues from the main office were planning a trip to Anchorage. A former colleague contacted me and suggested meeting up. They apparently plan to visit this factory. Although I look forward to seeing my old colleagues, hearing that the former manager will also be coming half ruins the excitement. A few days later, the group from the main office arrived in Anchorage for their trip. They also came for a tour of our factory, which is one of their suppliers. It was nice to see my old colleagues again, unchanged, and even being asked for work advice. Everyone at the office was amazed to see me, who usually only handles attendance at the factory, giving advice to the elite from the main office. Hey, you're surprisingly reliable, Raymond. Why were you transferred here? The factory manager kindly brought me some iced tea when things finally calmed down. There were various reasons, I replied vaguely. Alice was also at the office that day, and I could feel her curious gaze. Hey, Raymond, come here. The one calling me over so arrogantly was my former manager. He was gesturing for me at the office entrance. With a heavy sigh, I got up and responded to his beckoning. It's been a while, thanks for the other day. A greeting laced with a hint of sarcasm, the former section head made a face of displeasure. He seemed to be aware of what he did. You haven't told anyone, right? I nodded in response to the manager's words. When I was transferred here and left the main office, the section head called me in and said the same thing. I was fed up with him going on and on about how it might have been his mistake, but at the end of the day, it was my fault for handing over the client to my junior. You may have forgotten, but you were the one who ordered me to hand over the client to my junior, right? And I heard you were the one who mentored the junior. The manager, not expecting a comeback from me, looked surprised. He hurriedly said, "You're talking too loud." So you do realize it'd be a problem if someone overheard. The section head looked ridiculous as he panicked, and I couldn't help but feel amused. I don't need a boss who sets up his own subordinates and then gloats about it. Anyway, that contract mess was your fault. It's got nothing to do with me, you understand, right? As my coworkers, who finished the tour, began to gather near the office, the section head wrapped up the conversation unilaterally. I let out a big sigh as I watched him rejoin the main company's circle. Seems like I still have some lingering feelings for the headquarters. Reconnecting with old colleagues and being stimulated probably contributed to that. There was a part of me that felt sad about not being able to return to that circle. I didn't mean to listen, but Alice stood behind me and seemed to have been there for a while. She seemed to have overheard my conversation with the section head. Still, she said, mistakes should be corrected. It's all in the past. I've come to terms with it. I didn't want to deal with this issue again, so I made a non-committal reply. Alice looked at me with a troubled expression. After studying my face for a moment, she let out a small sigh. Do you realize what kind of face you're making? It's like you're unbearably sad. Why don't you be honest? I don't want to see that face of yours, Raymond. I hurriedly touched my face as Alice pointed it out. I felt embarrassed to have been seen in that state. Pretending to have given up while still having regrets is the most uncool thing. I'm really uncool, pretending not to have any lingering feelings. As I covered my trembling mouth with my hand, I admitted my true feelings to Alice. I felt like I couldn't lie to her. It's not uncool. It's not shameful not to give up on what you want. Let's reclaim your place. I'll help you. Alice said those encouraging words while looking straight into my eyes. Thank you. As I bowed my head, she replied, leave it to me, with a smile. Then began a series of hectic days. With the cooperation of my old colleagues, I collected evidence of the manager's wrongdoing. It turned out that not just me, but other colleagues had also been blamed for his mistakes or had their achievements stolen. The accusations kept piling up. We sought out every illegal aspect. Thanks to Alice's efforts, the documentation for accusing the manager was prepared quickly. You're surprisingly popular, despite being the kind of person who'd say such terrible things to me. Looking at the petition for my return to the headquarters collected by my former colleagues, Alice murmured in surprise. It seemed that she had not forgiven me for what happened that night. I'm really sorry about that time. I was nervous and drank too much. That night, I got too drunk because I was nervous about being alone with Alice. She laughed, nervous about being with an old woman like me. Her eyes seemed to see right through me. Taking a deep breath, I turned to face Alice. That day, I really wanted to make a move on you, but I just couldn't say it. At my words, Alice gave a satisfied smile. Then she cut the conversation short with, we'll continue this later. It seemed my confession had fallen on deaf ears. Then, the accusation at the head office was successful. As soon as I contacted Alice, she kept repeating I'm glad with obvious joy. Now I can return to the head office. That's good news, isn't it? I could hear a hint of sadness in Alice's voice coming from my phone. With that, I made up my mind. I decided to jump on the last flight to Anchorage. I couldn't wait to see Alice's face again. I took a taxi from the airport and rushed to Alice's law firm. It was already late, but there were still lights on in the office. I'm back. When I opened the door to Alice's law firm, she was working overtime by herself. Oh, you're back already. Congratulations on your return to head office. When are you going back? Alice put down the documents she was looking at and started spinning her pen with her slim fingers. Her eyes were slightly red. Do you plan to hire a secretary here? I think I could do the job quite well. Alice was surprised and dropped her pen on the floor. Why? What about the head office? I decided to be honest with myself. I reported to her that I declined the offer to return to the head office and also submitted my resignation. I just want to be with you, Alice. Forever. Is that bad? There's no reason that would be bad. The response was faint. For the first time in my life, I realized the importance of being true to myself, and I think she taught me that. Struggling to achieve the future you desire is nothing to be ashamed of. Oh, but I can't hire you here. Send your resume to the factory manager. I didn't miss her ears turning red as she suddenly switched to a business-like tone. My future is forever with her. The future I desire is one where she's always by my side. And I'm willing to make any effort to achieve it.